Okay, let's look at the STEM Enhance MP chart. So Browning's gonna go through the math portion. It looks like this.
One is right behind the pink sheet that's behind the black page.
See, black, pink, this.
Separated into math and science? It's just generic, right? It's not separated into math and science.
No, we'll just go through there and hit the math.
Okay. Okay, so she's already talked about, the three principles, but that enhances, STEM instruction, and that one size fit all, of course, does not, especially for, mathematics, you have to differentiate, which I can't say, but you know what the word means. And I don't want to imply that mathematics doesn't have any direct instruction lessons, because it also has some direct instruction lessons. Time, for one thing, you know, they can't really just discover how to tell time, it has to be taught. So there is some direct instruction that needs to be done in mathematics. So the second one is principles, experiencing learning, I can't read either, can I? Principles, experiencing learning using STEM best practices. So that, and when they understand and support the use of concrete, which is why we like for the principals to come, so they can see how valuable the concrete is. That enhances, whereas if they don't see the need for it, they want the kids to be doing worksheets for STAR review, that doesn't help the learning. And then of course the hiring, you have to hire the right people. Alt certs are a sticky issue, because there are some alt cert companies that, you know, you pay your money, you do it online for 8 hours and you're suddenly certified. But then there are others that are worthwhile. I know Pasadena ISD down by Houston has a really good alternative certification program.
But they're not for profits.
They're not for profit. UHCL has a really good alternative program for certification. So you have to be careful where they got their alt cert.
But the universities have a requirement of 24 hours of content. Those other, the
They have lots
districts,
of
the service
requirements.
centers, I mean, they're not under the same kind of, not alternative certification programs are equal. The A+ one has a 47% failure rate.
Failure in the test or
Failure in staying in the
staying in
classroom,
the classroom?
47%.
I think they don't require much observation, maybe 6 hours of observation, you know, so, you know, they're not getting what they need. So
Let me put a caveat in something that Denise and I were talking about this morning. The new certification standards are gonna hold the programs accountable for the first 2 years that teachers are in the classroom. They are, and in fact, we used to let students go and do their student teaching back home so they could save money. We can't do that anymore, because they're not gonna have somebody like me that's gonna be in their classroom with them, for example, so we're no longer allowing that to occur.
I mean, that was one thing that I had, you know, we have to fill out the
principal
survey, and I was 100% honest with it,
You
because
need to be.
my teachers who are alt cert, do they have potential? Absolutely, but it's a lot of work on my end to get them where they need to be.
But you know where you need to tell that are to your politicians, to your legislators. Texas has, and I'm gonna make this number up, but it's pretty close, 140 alt cert companies.
Oh, wow.
The next state that's closest to it has 25. It is a huge business in Texas. I don't know how it got to that way. And they
Started
are,
with the technology downfall back when I first started teaching. Because I remember, there's still men that teach now that lost their jobs in the computer industry, so they went alt cert to teach, and that was 19 or 18 years ago.
but they have content. I mean, when you've got people that don't have content nor pedagogy.
I don't know, I know what program I went through to become a teacher, you know, and I didn't come out a superstar, you know, I still have a lot of work to do, but,
As we all do.
yeah, but it's a lot different.
But I also think, you know, when I filled out those TEA surveys, it had a lot to do with the personality and of the person. Because I could have two people that came out of Texas Teach, one did really well,
Yeah.
and the other one, I mean, you know,
That's true too.
So when I filled that out, I really didn't, I don't know if I could give credit to the, you know, where they came from, because I was really struggling with the fact of, this one did really well, and this one didn't, what was the
Company
difference?
name.
Mhm. What's the difference, so.
So anyway, for hiring, you gotta be careful where their certification came from. If it's from UHCL, they're excellent. So,
Can you send me 2 math teachers and stuff?
I can.
I need.
Okay. So departmentalization, we've talked about that a little bit in here. We do have the stronger pedagogy and content from the people who are teaching only math or only science. But some people think departmentalizing too early is detrimental because they see that classroom as more of a family, you know, the comforting, nurturing situation for the little ones. Team members, if there's no collaboration, then there's not really a team, so. the
Or
team
training
members-
for it. I mean, you can be trained to be more collaborative.
Some people can, yes. Some people are coachable, and then there's me. So materials and equipment, you have to have them, you know, available. We've talked about that, no class sets.
Well, I think there needs to be some more language on this, because when Faith came in,
Yeah.
she was like me. Once I had that experience with math manipulatives, I became an advocate. I'm not gonna know how to do it, but I know how well I learned with it, and I'm
And
thinking,
when was that?
pardon?
And when did you have that experience?
With Party Punch,
Yeah,
how many
see,
years ago?
She's been doing this program for a few years before I became involved, and the other math person did not use math manipulatives. So her first experience was when I was doing a training of teachers, and I was using Cuisinart rods, which I don't think you've even ever seen.
No, I had not.
And so, yeah, I was nervous because I was new, you know, to the program. And I kept watching her in the back, and she had this studied look on her face, and I was like, okay, this will be my last summer here, so. So that's okay, I just moved to Houston, so, you know, because I moved to Houston the very year I started here.
She was at Seguin.
Yeah, I wasn't here. So, and she didn't even tell me afterwards, she didn't tell me why she had that studied look on her face, she just, she
Well, I
didn't
don't
say
think it was
anything.
studied look on my face.
Oh, you did, it was
I
like
think
this,
her-
it was like this the whole time. And I was like, what is she doing? Anyway,
But
the point is,
and you have to have enough. That was the point I was gonna say. You cannot have, in fact, I went into Licker's room one day. Y'all all know Jennifer Lickard. She's 5th grade, fabulous teacher.
She's up on grade.
She's at Plum Creek. Anyway, I went into her room and they had the kids, using, was it one, set for 4? I think it was a set for 4.
space 10 blocks, one for a table of 4, yes.
That's too many. Too many kids,
She
not
was
enough
using them
materials.
for place value, and so she didn't have enough of the, thousands cube. You know, yeah, it was too many. If you have more than 3 in a group, then that 4th person just sits there. I mean, some of y'all in here tried not to at first touch those manipulatives. You were gonna watch your neighbor do it, you know, which you can't do. You just can't do that. You have to make sure everybody has their hands on the stuff.
Yeah, so, but enough equipment, that's science and math.
Yep. Room assignments, y'all know more about that than me.
Well, in fact, that was part of the question with Luciano was about, we were talking about room assignments. That even if you have them on the same halls, where they're gonna have conversations if they're on the same halls generally, most teachers will. But to assign science teachers to rooms that they can actually teach science in, and even math, Tim's room, you know how many math manipulatives? I mean, he's purchased most of those himself.
And some from us.
And you have to have storage, and you have to be able to have them immediately available. One of the fabulous math teachers, again, that was working with Lori, I remember going in, then she was doing a review. And so she had stations, sixth grade, so she had stations. And at the last minute, she threw out some math manipulatives at one of the stations. And she said she was surprised at the number of her kids, and this is at a STEM academy, okay? The number of her kids who still wanted to work the problems with manipulatives. But they worked them because they were there, because she had put them out.
I never found out what her scores were on the exam, but that would be interesting.
Oh, they were good.
Yeah.
Zanitas were
So
very
if
good.
if they had not had those manipulatives available, their review may not have been as effective.
Also, there's some research that's in here, I'm not gonna I'm not tell you to look for it, but there's some research I read on test prep. Test prep is a horrible thing that is done to children. And what the research is a meta-analysis, it's in here, and I've got the citation for you, said there's two things that you need to do for effective test preparation. Number one, you have an assignment that is varied, it's not a bunch of work problems, for example, with math. It has varied components in it. And number two, you only give it once. One test prep, pre-test, or whatever you wanna call it, practice test, once. The more you give it, the lower the scores are.
Marzano's research supports that as well.
So are you saying, I just wanna be clarified, so I give Patricia the test, she doesn't do well, you're saying don't give it to her
Correct.
to redo that test?
It says a mixed format. Different types of questions had greater effect on students' memory than recalling information from cues or short answer questions like multiple choice. And the format was better than methods such as restudying or practicing the content over time. You have to, I'm from Comal School District, and we have 5 weeks of STAR prep, 5 weeks. That's criminal. And what ends up happening is the teachers don't have enough time to teach the content to begin with, and then you're asking them to reteach it. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, if you don't teach with manipulatives and then pictorial and then abstract, you're gonna be reteaching anyway. So, because they're not gonna learn it the first time. Right, so,
Yeah.
but teachers will tell me they don't have time, a lot to go through that lesson like that, but they're saving time in the long run because they learn it the first time. And that's really hard to get into their heads because they're trained to look at the clock, oh my gosh, it's April the 3rd and I should have already done this.
But that's where those YAGs will drive things.
I
That's
know.
why you need to have lots of questions, lots of discussion about YAGs and are they appropriate.
And benchmarks.
Yeah. Well, the law says you can only have 2.
Yeah, but it covers
Two
this much
district
material and
benchmarks.
I'm only here, so there's that stress.
But also that, that's when assessments come into place, because those can help with that. But it's the tier 1 instruction, I mean, really, because like what I experienced, my teachers are so worried about missing a tutorial, and I'm like, but you should, tutorials are for those tier 2 and tier 3 kids who are still struggling, not for those kids that just,
What
like,
Not for 80% of the kids.
What if the assessments were formative assessments rather than multiple choice?
I check for that too. We would have an end of unit assessment, but then we would also in between have a, I forgot what they called it exactly, but it was a formative assessment.
Well, questioning is a formative assessment, and it would seem to me like what you wanna see is the teacher's formative assessments, not the schools or the districts. I mean, that's where teachers are gonna be informed, is by their own crafting of their own questions, and I make my student teachers, they have to put every question, everything in their lesson has to be on the PowerPoint. It's not a lecture, but it cues them so that first period and sixth period get the same questions with added ones, et cetera. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, they should
it's
be
not strict
developed
like that.
beforehand.
Absolutely. And that makes me think about what kind of questions that I need to ask my students, rather than trying to shoot from the hip, which is, I'm not gonna formulate as good answers, but I was going back to something else. What were we talking about?
They don't write their questions out ahead of time, they end up with yes, no questions that end with what, where the kids have to guess what is in the teacher's head, especially for like middle school. You know, when do you schedule what classes for the, materials and facilities and all of that?
Well, even in elementary, there's, you know, you got the same kind of,
Hopefully in self-contained, they have everything they need in every classroom, right? Yeah.
sure do. Yeah, but when, are you gonna schedule all your math classes in the morning, all your core ones in the morning? I mean, you have scheduling questions that are important to answer.
I know that's what we've been talking about, because they've given us exactly how many minutes per subject area were allotted for every grade level. And then even broken up some of it, and especially the ELAR, like specifically how many minutes are spent on it.
And that's what Mark was.
That comes from the state or from the
Yeah.
district?
Mark from the district gave it to us.
And I think our hard part right now with scheduling is we all have something unique to our campus. You know, Patricia has pre-Kers, we don't. You know, some of us have the option of using a music teacher or art teacher or whatever in their rotation, so, you know, rotation wise. And so what we did yesterday is we just talked about, what if we gave them their specials time and their lunch time, and then maybe tried to get with that group or that grade level and say, okay, here are the times that you're stuck with as far as, you know, your specials and your lunchtime, but give feedback as to where you have to do 150 minutes of this, you know, 40 minutes of this, where do you wanna put it? Cause we're afraid, you know, I think Suzanne yesterday started writing it all out, but then we were afraid, we're gonna hand that to the teacher and they're gonna be PO'd before they even get on campus, that we're telling them when to teach it. I mean, really?
Well, don't you think a lot of it has to do with how much flexibility there is with that?
Right.
So it's 40 minutes today, and it's 38 minutes tomorrow, and it's 42 minutes the next day. So I think some of their anxiety is gonna be, how flexible is that gonna be? For the good of the kids. I mean, that's what they're thinking about.
And I think we thought there were gonna be some fine lines. We were having some anxiety with that yesterday, just talking. And as I walked and talked during our break, I ended up with Mark, and I just said, you know, you're killing us. I said, there is no wiggle room to go to the restrooms. I mean, we have 40 plus 20, I mean, everything equals the amount of time. He's like, well, make it work and then come back and let me know how many minutes that is, and we'll just take it out. Okay, you know, so then yeah, that was good for me to know. I felt better that, okay, we are gonna have a little bit of say in it. It's not, you know, hard, fast.
Right, and what he texted both of us this morning and said, tell them to table the issue. I promise we are going to support you and us
Right.
in doing this, and we will hash it out, so. you
Well,
know.
actually, we don't care, all right? She's mixing apples and oranges here. We don't care how you do your science and math scheduling, okay? That's up to you. We will work within those guidelines. We have recommendations think about materials and we'll, you know, that kind of recommendation. What we care about in scheduling and student teaching is I cannot place a student teacher at your campus, your two campuses, or any of your campuses, if that student teacher cannot teach at least 3 science classes. So if you're having everybody teach science at the same time, I cannot place a student teacher at your campus.
Per day.
You mean 3 times in one day?
That was kind of sloppy language, wasn't it? See, there we catch each other. Absolutely, at least three in a day. At least 3 in a day.
But do keep in mind, you know, that chart of when learning is maximum, and it's maximum at the beginning, it falls down in the middle and then comes back up at the end of the day or into the class period. So if your teachers are spending the first 10 minutes of class taking roll and they're missing that maximum learning time. And at the end of it, they're just putting up backpacks and things like that, they're missing another prime learning time. Just keep that in mind. I can send you the graph.
I want to get back to the scheduling here. So if we're talking secondary, that it's not IPC biology, which is a killer in science. You're worn out. And in fact, even with math models, which is a difficult class to teach in high school, if there's not some kind of deep downtime after teaching something like math models. Your brain is just drained. And I know therapists have said if they've got a difficult patient, they need a downtime after that difficult patient. They're counseling or whatever they're doing with. So that's kind of what we're thinking about with the scheduling on here. And actually, what this is these are just a series of things that we said, this is what impedes good science or math. So we actually started on the right side with the impede column and say, okay, what kind of recommendations can we make for the enhance, if you wanna enhance it?
Let me rephrase what she said. The math models class course is not hard to teach. It's the type of children
That are in.
that are in there makes it difficult.
They're the Lorries that don't like math. I'll tell you 10 times, I don't like math.
But she's probably good at it.
Yes.
I can balance my checkbook.
You did that just
And I
fine.
can calculate my rest. Well, that's good. These two.
Okay, well, teamwork.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and of course, you have to protect instructional time. I think she showed that slide where, how many, 25 or so many days were used for other things. And so you have to guard that particularly.
23 days.
Yeah, of course, high school always, or middle school always has those pep rallies that come up and all kinds of things. But there are other ways to handle it. And of course, building a community of practice, that is, we've talked about that all day long. How your teachers need to have a team, you need to work together, and they can solve a whole lot of problems on their own if they're just talking to each other. And you wanna do the love languages?
Yeah, have y'all read your love languages yet? Okay, so I told you mine and what I needed and what kind of feedback I need from a teacher. I can tell you, I've been here 27 years. I have had 3 different bosses that I can remember, and twice in 27 years have they said something to me that was positive. I mean, not negative, they don't say negative things. One of them said, "You're really a hard worker." Yeah. Well, but I didn't need that. I need for them to make sure that I've got what I need to teach with, and they do that. I have very good support here. So what's your love language, Deanna?
I'm down to acts of service and words of affirmation. And I wouldn't have said words of affirmation up until probably the last couple of years when I, moved to the high school and didn't have a clue, and I needed someone to say, "Good job," or "You're on the wrong track," or I needed those words of affirmation to know which direction to go in. So I'm leaning on both of those because beforehand, I think for me, it was acts of service.
Do your teachers need to know that? Do they need to know that you need feedback about whether or not you're on the right track to help them teach?
I think that would be very important, especially with me going to a campus where, I've worked with probably a handful of them, but I don't know the rest, the rest of them are new, so, yes, I think that's gonna be important.
And your other one?
And the other one was acts of service.
And what does that mean for you?
I think, just like that first line, action speaks louder than words, and so that's why I'm saying it's kind of a fight, because it's that the words, the action means more than the words, but really I needed the words recently.
I read some research several years ago, and it said most teachers will work harder for a pat on the back than for a stipend. It's more important for them to feel valued and listened to than just to shove some money at them. Of course, I would want both, but feeling valued is important.
I tell Ruby and Alexis, I need for you to do a good job. Now, this week I said something to them because we were prepping, and I said, "Good job." And Ruby said, "I need that. I need words of affirmation." I said, "That's good, because you're not likely to get it from me, because I don't need it and I don't think about it." I've tried to learn.
Trust me.
No, and so, you know, for me to learn to do that, I have had to work at it. And Alexa's, hers is touch, but she doesn't want just anybody touching her. I can touch her, I can hug her, but she doesn't want just anybody to do that, so.
Jen's the same way, she's not a hugger.
Huh?
Jen, she don't like to hug. Her Jen, that's,
Oh, Patterson, yeah, she's not a hugger.
she'll let me hug her.
She's not.
Well, actually, we hug, in our mixed teachers, we hug each other. And I'm not a hugger, but we hug.
You've been a hugger since I've been.
What?
Maybe Wendell taught me how to do that.
Yeah, maybe.
But, let's go on.
Instructional coaches.
Oh, wait,
No,
I thought we
the
didn't
love
finish all those.
languages.
Oh, that's in mine.
Yeah, now Lisa, what's yours?
Oh, mine is words of affirmation, which I think works well because Deanna and I will be working together, so we both have the same love language. That's good. And physical touch, but again, not from anyone. I actually don't like people to touch me until like we're there, and then when we're there, then I need it.
But it's not touch, there's an adjective that goes before that. Meaningful touch.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not just touch.
Well, and I do get very, like, if anyone comes and hugs me, to me, it's not meaningful because I don't know you. Like, that's just like you're doing it to do it. But again, it has to come through, like, I'm a very guarded person. So once you get through the guard, then it's very important to me. It has to be meaningful, right? But my first one is words of affirmation.
And kids, you know, in terms of turning this into what goes on in the classroom, the high fives, those kind of things are meaningful to enough kids that it works with doing it with a lot of kids, if not all of them. Tricia?
So I will go with, words of affirmation and also physical touch. To be very mindful of that, and now I ask some teachers, like new people, like, I'm a hugger, are you a hugger? Can I pat you? Like, you know, so now I'm a little bit more mindful of that, but that's my response.
Yeah,
I'm standing right here.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea to ask.
And I totally know that I'm not quality time at all. Like, I'd rather be left alone.
Me too.
It should be amazing.
These stickers,
So I know not to, but that's what I was gonna say, mine is between quality of time and acts of service, so I'm not sure
you're
what.
gonna choose your sticker and put this
So-
on your
Okay.
tent, okay?
So,
Interesting, Jamie.
Oh, yeah, but
You like people to spend time with you?
I do like spending time with people, I really do.
she's the one that sent the text yesterday.
Yeah,
Right?
that's true.
Yeah,
Spending time
I do
with
like
you.
spending time with people and, I mean, there's times I wanna be left alone, yes, but, I mean, I enjoy spending time with people and having those conversations and stuff like
But
that.
does it say that they, quote, love you if they spend time with you? This is kind of the
No.
idea is, how do you know somebody really cares for you?
Well, I don't
It's
know, well,
because
that's
this
why I
is
say
what
it's
they're going to
between
do
the
for
two
you.
things, I don't know.
So maybe you give
So,
love
do you
through
want-
quality of time.
I was gonna say, do you want your husband to spend time with you or go wash the dishes?
Ooh,
Both.
oh,
I'd rather
that's a
spend
great
time with
question.
me.
I
I'd rather him spend time with me.
Okay,
than
then there
do
you go.
something for me.
That's quality time.
I don't need someone to do stuff for me all the time to show me that they care.
I do.
That.
I don't need big diamonds.
I don't
just
need somebody
for
to
them do
tell
the
me
dishes.
either, like, I don't like, see some of my staff when I came on, or when I was still AP there, like, they told me, like, well, they say I'm not a hugger, which I'm not, like, I hug the kids all the time, but I'm not a hugger with staff,
No,
I'm
it's-
just not, that's just not me, I don't know why. So I've had to work on that, and then my other one having to work on is, the words of affirmation, because, like, I don't need you to tell me I'm doing a good job, so.
So you're gonna have
so-
to work on it like I did.
So, yeah, I had, so I've got a lot better about it, so. My beginning of year when I got there in October versus my end of year was, they said that I grew a lot in that, so. That was good,
I think
so.
Lori said the same
so-
thing. Go ahead, Suzanne.
I'm like Annalisa, mine is physical touch, but only, by certain people, and I think if we have that relationship. And then the other would be words of affirmation.
I think it would be important for staff like me to know what you need from me. For us to be able to establish a good working relationship, it would be easier for me if I know what you need from me.
If you would have asked me in November, I would say it's affirmation. But I look at, I'm a person who shows my love through acts of service. Like, I'm a people pleaser. I'm gonna do whatever at home. I do everything, even now, for a lot of things. So when I come home and something's been done for me, that means a lot to me, because I don't ask for things to be done for me. So when it's recognized, wow, you know, or hey, you don't have to cook dinner tonight, you know, even though I don't mind, because that's what I do, that's my job, you know. And
Well,
so
let me tell you, HEB has some really nice dinners.
I'll let go.
So, but I also,
like those little ready things you
Yes.
stick in there.
but also I am, especially being new to, you know, and I don't have a tight support system, affirmations are nice too to say, because I came from a district where there were a million, I had people I could talk to all the time, and we were collaborating. I'm kind of my own island in so many ways, and so when somebody says, hey Lori, you know, you're doing a great job, because a lot of you guys have worked together for so long and know each other, and
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed about Deanna and Mark and Anna when we first came is they were on the phone almost every day together.
All the time.
Lots of conversations, and that, I think really builds.
And I have to get better out of reaching out and saying, hey, because it doesn't matter what level we're working with, it's that support. And I think Luciano and I have kind of, you know, you got in together now, and there's been like at 10 o'clock, hey, are you awake? Can you talk for a minute, you know? But just knowing that I'm not the only one, so affirmation too. I mean, I'm about all of them really. I think I have a little, but not, because I did a little quiz, and I scored highs on acts of service and affirmations.
Well, it's not what you do for people, it's
No,
what
but
you
yes.
need for them.
But I think but what I need from them is what I do for people. It's
Mhm.
the same for me. That's what I see, that way
And sometimes that's true.
Because you're assuming that that's what everybody wants, because you want that.
Mhm.
The other thing I have found at the high school was so big, and Lori, just kind of a hint or words of wisdom. Teachers would come by, and it was constant all day long. I'd go from this teacher to this teacher. By the time I turned around, I forgot what I was talking about. But then I'd get home, and it was like, oh yeah, we had a really good conversation. So then I was able to text that teacher and say, I really did enjoy that conversation. I'm so glad we got to visit today. And I would do that for 3 or 4 when I got home, when it was my downtime. I couldn't give the words of affirmation right then and there, because it was pop. It was all day long. And so I didn't have that time. But when I did get to go home, and it might have been 9:30 at night when I was about to lay down, but it was like, oh, we got to talk today. So I'd pick up my phone and send something, and so that helped to me, because I'd forget to say thank you, or you did a great job.
So I can tell you that one of the main things that we have teacher feedback, and Denise will talk with you more about that this year. But one of the main things that your teachers say is they need for you to buy them stuff to teach them. Resources. They need stuff.
We need more money.
Yes.
Well, think about the list that Patricia got that we can actually provide for you that will give you.
Sometimes they say they need
more
stuff though, for example, the end of the year budget, and I said, well, what are the things that you're needing? They sent me this whole list of like little science type, things, and I said, so do we have those things in the science lab? And, oh, well, I don't know. And they went out there and they came back, they said everything we wanted it's already there.
Oh my
And I thought, well, go look, I mean, you know, so, that's part of it.
Well, and quite frankly, I wouldn't buy anything that the teacher didn't request. They're not gonna use it if they are not gonna
Right.
request it. And if they're asking for stuff, I would ask them to explain their answers, tell me how you're gonna use it, what text does this teach, and, you know, make them justify their request. They should have already thought that through before they come bouncing in there to you. Okay, go ahead. You wanna go over with the instructional coaches?
Yeah, we're down to personal coaches, so they have to be, as we said earlier, strong in content, and the content that they're coaching in. So if they're, I know on elementary campuses, sometimes they're coaching in reading and math, so they have to be strong in both of them, not just the reading.
And Deanna, or one of you guys over there was talking about your instructional coaches coming to our training. They can come, but I cannot pay them. Now, we pay our teachers, they get about $100 a day when they come. If they come to, that day's PD, whatever we use, they get it. They may not get it that day, but for example, we went to, I don't know, we did something and I know, we're gonna do something that tomorrow you'll see. And so we used this book in part of the training, and they liked it. I love this book, it's great for kids, because it's not just a book, it has stories in there and about how, you know, the economic impact. Sometimes it's about this old guy by the name of Malcolm Beck, whom I know, but he has Alzheimer's now, which is kind of sad. But anyway, he tells stories as a kid about, you know, these insects, so it's really kind of interesting. So we will be giving these to those teachers who came to the last professional development with us. I'll pass it around.
But if
I
they
can't
don't
give it
come,
to
if
you
they're
because you
absent and
didn't
we use
come to
it, they
that
don't
training.
get it. Okay, so if they're absent when I use Cuisinart rods and I don't ever use them again, then they don't get the Cuisinart rods.
And they only get one set. We cannot buy student materials. I can buy a tub and give it to a teacher.
It's for her personal use.
Yeah, it's their personal, just like that, the iPads that we buy them, it's theirs, it's not the school's, not ours, it's not the school's.
So we're down to test practice, and we've talked about that already a little bit also, how some people use, as she said, as many as 5 weeks on reviewing for the end of year test, and that's just lost instructional time. If they're teaching the TEKS to the depth that they should not need that much review.
Most effective teachers report to us that 2 weeks is good.
And of course, professional development needs to be specific for their content area, for their grade level. It can't be the generic, and it needs to be ongoing. You know, the one-shot 6-hour, 1 day does you for the rest of the year, it ain't gonna work. It has to be sustained, which is what we do, sustained.
I would say as a caveat though, if it's something like technology, you know, how to use an iPad or, you know, whatever piece of equipment, 6 hours are okay, but they've gotta take it back and use it, you know, in the classroom to develop that facilness that they need with it. But here's what the research says. The federal research says that teachers need over 100 hours per year of intense professional development to see a change in the classroom. 100. Here's what our research says. Our research says 170 hours. We have them 70 hours in the summer. We have them 30 hours throughout the academic year on the Saturday sessions, plus some extra ones that we throw in. And then we have another 70 hours a second summer. It's that second fall that we start seeing some real changes in classrooms. And that's with us out there in their classrooms and talking with you guys. I mean, it's really, it takes a lot to change classroom instruction.
It has to be sustained, that's that.
Yeah, long-term and intense are the words that they use.
I think we're down to the TEKS. So you have to make sure that the TEKS are, you know, they're teaching the TEKS. And many times the teachers do not understand what the TEKS really mean. I know that's true in mathematics. So they have to be able to, the term that's floated around a lot is unpack. They have to be able to unpack those TEKS and know exactly what they mean. So if they're talking about, surface area, and it just says surface area, that's the total surface area, they don't have to go into lateral surface area and all of the other, things that surface area involve. They just want the kids to know how to find surface area of a 3D shape. So you have to make sure they understand the T's. I know some
Now, I have a
districts,
question for you, sorry.
I know some districts spend a lot of time, with consultants that come in to help the teachers unpack the T's. So that's very worthwhile money spent.
Very worthwhile.
Okay, in science, they can learn the content through our national standards. So we have the 2011 and 2013 are our current ones. So my question to Browning is, can they do that with the NCTM standards? Can they learn the math by studying this NCTM
They
standards?
certainly can. Whether they do or not's another story, but yes, they certainly could.
Thus, the reason why we haven't put all the standards in our lesson plans.
So then that means if you are teaching the TEKS, then your lessons are TEKS based. And not just some fluffy lesson that you saw at a workshop and boy, this was really fun, but it didn't teach a darn thing. So, excuse my language. And then science, taught K-5, you wanna handle that one?
Well, I want to go back to the TEKS, that in science, we are saying you must connect them to the national standards. You're gonna do a better job understanding those TEKS and teaching them if you get into the national standards. And so there was a big controversy with Common Core, that is kind of died down. I don't know if y'all have seen it, but I've seen it kind of die down. There is no Common Core in science. It's only math and ELA. Sometimes people have called the NGSS Common Core, but that's not true. It comes from ignorance. And so the framework is the one that I usually reference because it has more of that background information and explaining things than NGSS has. I'll go through that NGSS form either today or tomorrow. Go ahead.
Well, in talking about the Common Core, I don't know why people were so upset over that with the mathematics, because the 2003 TEKS for math in Texas were very strong. They were based on the NCTM standards. When they revised them in 2012, they, I think, weakened them a bit because other people who didn't really know what they were doing were included on the committee, so they're not necessarily based solely on the NCTM standards. They have other things thrown in, and some grade levels even skip what grade level. Our teachers last summer told us that angles were taught in like 4th and 5th grade, and skipped 6th grade and taught again in 7th. So they're not vertically aligned. But if you look at the Math Common Core, it's nothing that we're not already doing in Texas. The multiple representations was the big deal in Common Core. The invented strategies, all the alternative strategies that we talk about a lot, are in Common Core, and we've been doing that in Texas from as long as I can remember. When the very first TextEAMS modules, I used to call them, were developed back in the late 70s. We have been doing those types of things. So really, when the parents say, my kid missed this, he got the right answer, but he missed it because he didn't do it the way the teacher said he had to, that teacher is misunderstanding the reason for using these other representations. And if the kid understands how to do it this way, then doing it this way shouldn't be forced down their throat, like her daughter-in-law, Begonia. Or he said, pick the way you understand, and she did it, and she passed the test. So I never understood the flack about Common Core from Texas. Now, the other states, they, to be real honest, were not teaching the way Texas was, and so yeah, they had some difficulty with Common Core because their teachers were not teaching that way. They were sit and get teachers.
Well, again, being old, you have a lot of history. I was going to compare the Texas standards with the Oregon, with a math ed friend of mine. And he said, we can't do that. And I said, why not? He said, because we don't have any.
Right. I had a friend that was writing the state exams for Ohio, and they had no state curriculum.
No
So I said,
standards.
how do you write the test,
Yeah,
in the
right.
course test, if you don't have a curriculum? She said, well, we just guess. We just write the items and hope they work.
So the idea of having standards is an old idea in Texas.
Yeah.
In
It's not
science,
nationwide.
in science, they have,
How progressive you are.
they've changed, but the idea of having, some kind of standards are important. Now, standards are not a curriculum. A curriculum is how you arrange those standards, and as I said, the TEKS were not written to be marched through the TEKS. And YAG should not be written that way, that's not being thoughtful with them. Math would come closer, sciences doesn't have to be, taught in a specific sequence. There are some things that should, and in fact, some of the TEKS should be divided in science. You should teach some of them here, and then in that same strand, and then teach some of those leftover ones in that strand somewhere else.
It's true for math.
Yeah.
The maths have multiple concepts in one TEKS, and you can't teach them all in one day. Like all the operations for fractions, you would not teach add, subtract, multiply, and divide in one day or even 1 week. That would take many days and many weeks.
Well, the Common Core issue was a political issue, it had nothing to do with academics. And so the problems that I saw in Texas with Common Core is with teachers who were pulling stuff off of Pinterest and,
Yeah.
odds and ends here and there, the web somewhere. And the idea that it wasn't like Lori did with Begonia and show them these different ways and choose one, or even challenging them with that growth mindset by saying, okay, this appears to be a little bit harder for you to work with, but let's see if you can do it. Try it, see if you can make it, solve that problem doing it this way, even though it's easier for you to do another way, because this is gonna make your brain grow. You have to be a salesman if you're gonna be a teacher. So, it's that idea that's okay. What's not okay is on the test say, you have to do it this way.